Hello and welcome to After the Bell, 43 Years of Teaching Wisdom. My name is Rowan Healy, and after 43 years of teaching in Queensland secondary schools, I am preparing to retire. In this podcast, I share some of the lessons, experiences and stories I have gathered during my time in the classroom. In the previous episode, I spoke about why your first year does not define you. Today, I would like to explore one of the most important lessons I have learned throughout my career. Before students are ready to learn from us, they usually need to know that we see them, respect them, and want them to succeed. In other words, relationships come before content. As teachers, we are naturally concerned about curriculum. We have units to complete, assignments to prepare, assessments to mark, and deadlines to meet. Particularly in senior subjects, there can be considerable pressure to cover everything within a limited time. It is easy to walk into a classroom thinking, I have a great deal to teach today, so we need to begin immediately. However, students do not enter the room as empty containers waiting to be filled with information. They bring their personalities, experiences, worries, friendships, strengths, and insecurities with them. They may have had an argument before school. They may be anxious about an assessment. They may be tired, distracted, or dealing with circumstances we know nothing about. This does not mean we abandon the curriculum or excuse every behaviour. It means we recognise that learning takes place between people. A student who feels safe, respected, and valued is more likely to participate, attempt difficult work, and accept feedback. The time we invest in relationships is not separate from teaching. It is one of the things that makes effective teaching possible. Relationship building often begins with something very simple, learning students' names. A student's name is an important part of their identity. Using it correctly tells the student, I know who you are not invisible in this classroom. At the beginning of a school year, learning more than 100 names can feel daunting. It certainly becomes more challenging as the years go by, but it's worth making the effort. Use seating plans if they help. Greet students by name as they enter. Look at the class roll before the lesson begins. If you make a mistake, apologise, correct yourself, and keep trying. Pronouncing a student's name correctly also matters. If you're unsure, ask the student rather than repeatedly guessing. These may seem like small gestures, but relationships are often built through small, repeated moments. Greeting students at the door can also make a significant difference. It gives the teacher an opportunity to welcome each student and establish the tone before the lesson begins. A simple good morning, how are you going, good to see you, creates a point of connection. It also allows you to notice how students are arriving. Is someone unusually quiet? Does a student appear upset? Is there tension between two students? Is the class energetic and likely to need a settling activity? These brief observations can help you make better decisions during the lesson. Greeting students warmly does not mean that expectations disappear. You can be welcoming while still reminding someone to put away their phone, prepare their equipment, or enter the room calmly. Warmth and authority are not opposites. Some of the most effective teachers combine genuine kindness with very clear boundaries. Another important part of building relationships is taking an interest in students as individuals. You do not need to know every detail of their lives, nor should teachers attempt to become students' friends. The teacher-student relationship is a professional one, and appropriate boundaries must always remain in place. However, we can still be curious about the people we teach. Ask about their interests, sporting activities, part-time jobs, or creative pursuits. Notice when they achieve something. Follow up on a previous conversation. If a student tells you they have a football final on Saturday, asking on Monday how the game went shows that you've listened and remembered. A short conversation can communicate that the student matters beyond the work they produce. This can be particularly powerful for students who feel unsuccessful at school. Their strongest abilities may not always be visible through traditional classroom tasks. When we recognise their strengths outside our subject, we can sometimes help them develop the confidence to engage inside it. Relationships are also built by being fair and consistent. Students pay very close attention to fairness. They notice if rules appear to change from one student to another. They notice if consequences depend on the teacher's mood. They notice if some students receive patience while others receive immediate criticism. Being fair does not always mean treating every student in exactly the same way. Different students may need different forms of support. One student may require additional time, simplified instructions, or a quiet reminder. Fairness means that decisions are based on genuine needs and clear principles, not favouritism or frustration. We will not handle every situation perfectly. Teachers are human, and sometimes we make the wrong call. When that happens, it is acceptable to acknowledge it. Saying, "I did not handle that as well as I should have," does not weaken a teacher's authority. In many cases, it strengthens the relationship, as it shows honesty and accountability. Students need adults who model how to take responsibility, not adults who pretend never to be wrong. Listening is another essential part of relationship building. Teachers spend a great deal of time speaking. We explain, question, instruct, correct, and encourage. But sometimes the most valuable thing we can do is listen. When a student raises a concern, we may be tempted to respond immediately or solve the problem before they finish speaking. Taking a moment to listen can help us understand what is actually happening. A student who refuses to begin work may not simply be lazy or defiant. They may not understand the task. They may be embarrassed to ask for help. They may be afraid of failing in front of their classmates. This does not mean that every explanation excuses the behaviour. Understanding a behaviour and accepting it are not the same thing. Understanding gives us a better chance of responding effectively. Instead of immediately asking, "Why aren't you working?" we might quietly say, "What's stopping you from getting started?" That change in language invites a conversation rather than being a confrontation. One of the strongest ways to build trust is to notice effort, not only achievement. In every class, some students will find the subject easier than others. If praise is reserved only for correct answers and high grades, students who struggle may feel there is no point in trying. Specific encouragement is far more meaningful than general praise. Instead of saying, "Good work," we might say, "I noticed that you checked your answer and corrected the mistake. You kept working even when the question became difficult. Your explanation is much clearer than it was last time." These comments show students exactly what they are doing well. They also communicate that improvement matters. Students need to know that their teacher sees progress, even when they have not yet reached the final goal. Relationships are especially important when correction or discipline is required. A positive relationship does not mean avoiding difficult conversations. In fact, strong relationships allow teachers to have those conversations more effectively. Correct the behaviour while preserving the student's dignity wherever possible. If a matter can be addressed quietly and privately, that is often better than confronting a student in front of the entire class. Public correction can quickly become a performance. The student may feel the need to defend themselves because their peers are watching. A calm conversation after the lesson may produce a much better result. Focus on what happened, why it matters, and what needs to happen next. The message should be, "This behaviour is not acceptable, but you are still a valued member of this class." Students need to understand that making a poor decision does not permanently define them. Every new lesson should provide an opportunity to begin again. There will, of course, be students with whom relationships are difficult to build. Some students will not respond immediately to our efforts. They may have learned not to trust adults, or they may expect relationships with teachers to end badly. In these situations, persistence matters. Continue to greet them. Continue to use their name. Continue to notice appropriate behaviour. Continue to apply expectations calmly and fairly. Do not expect one friendly conversation to transform the relationship overnight. Trust is built through consistency. The student is watching to see whether your patience is genuine, whether your expectations remain stable, and whether you will treat them with respect on difficult days as well as successful ones. Some of the most rewarding teacher-student relationships take the longest to develop. It is also important to remember that teachers are not counsellors, social workers, or psychologists. Building relationships does not mean attempting to manage serious concerns alone. If a student shares information involving their safety or well-being, follow your school's reporting and student protection procedures. Seek support from the appropriate pastoral, well-being, or leadership staff. A caring teacher listens, responds appropriately, and connects the student with the people who can provide specialised assistance. Knowing when to seek help is part of caring responsibly. So how can a teacher begin building stronger relationships this week? Start small. Learn and correctly pronounce every student's name. Greet students as they enter. Have one brief conversation with a student you do not know well. Notice one student's effort and describe specifically what they did well. Respond to a minor problem calmly rather than personally. Follow up on something a student told you earlier. None of these actions requires a special program or large amount of time. What matters is that they happen consistently. Relationships are rarely built through one grand gesture. They are built through hundreds of ordinary interactions. After 43 years in the classroom, I've forgotten some of the lessons I taught. I've forgotten particular worksheets, textbook chapters, and assessment tasks. But I remember students. I remember the student who finally understood something they had struggled with. I remember the quiet student who gradually found the confidence to participate. I remember the challenging student who eventually realised that correction did not mean rejection. And I remember former students who returned years later, not to talk about a particular formula or computer program, but to talk about how they felt in the classroom. That is a powerful reminder of what remains after the content has faded. Before we finish, here are 5 thoughts to take into the coming week. First, learn students' names and use them positively. Second, combine warmth with clear and consistent expectations. Third, listen for the need beneath the behaviour. Fourth, correct students without humiliating them. And finally, remember that small interactions, repeated consistently, build trust over time. Thank you for joining me for this episode of After the Bell, 43 Years of Teaching Wisdom. If you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with a teacher or colleague. In the next episode, we'll explore classroom management without confrontation, how calm routines, clear expectations, and respectful responses can help teachers maintain order without turning every difficulty into a battle. Until next time, take care of yourself, look after your colleagues, and remember that students may forget some of what we teach, but they are unlikely to forget how we made them feel. You have been listening to After the Bell, 43 Years of Teaching Wisdom. Thank you for listening, and I will see you after the bell.